Left right to navigate through content.
Welcome to the San Gorgonio
Press
Chapter
the
Trail
line
Talk
or
series.
right
My name is John St. Clair,
playlist.
and I am going to be your
Valid.
Zoom
Ready to stream
host.
or enjoy. Recommended for
And
you on Peacock. Press left to right.
there
Okay,
we go.
what's going on here?
I muted everybody.
Okay, good.
We
But
had some voice in the background.
right, I made
So
one.
I'm going to be your Zoom host, and before we start our program, I want to go over the ground rules. First of all, everyone should be muted except for the speaker. And if you have questions, uh, you can write your questions in the chat section, and chat has a little talking bubble icon that you click on, and the default is to send the message to everyone, and that's what you can do. And just type your question in there, and we will make sure that eventually your question will get answered. Um, that way, the speaker will not be interrupted by somebody blurting out a question. So that's how we handle questions, is through the chat section. And this uh, Zoom event is being recorded, and if you really like the presentation, um, tell your friends. And San Gorgonio chapter has a YouTube channel, and I didn't send out the address to the YouTube channel before, but I'll try to do that after this is over. I'll send it out to everybody, and then you could share it with friends, or
Our camping basics and
so you can not only watch this one again, but all of our Trail Talk Zoom sessions have been recorded and are on the San Gorgonio chapter YouTube channel. So it's a fantastic resource to find out about opportunities to do things. So I'm going to introduce our speaker for tonight, who is Mary Ann Reese, and her program is called Alaska Sampler. And she's going to be sharing lots of photos and information about a Sierra Club trip she took in Alaska. And Mary Ann is been active in the San Gorgonio chapter for a long time. She's the past Sierra Club California chair, the past San Gorgonio chapter chair. She's current San Gorgonio chapter conservation chair, and is also a San Gorgonio chapter outings leader. And she just did an outing a few days ago, and it was a Joshua Tree stargazing outing, which had about 20 people attend, and was quite successful. And so I think at this point, I'm going to take my picture off of here and turn it over to Mary Ann Reese.
well, thank you, John. That's a very nice introduction. And yet we did have fun at Joshua Tree. It was a really fun time. Um, so before I put the slides up, I'll just share just a little bit. When I retired back 10 years ago, I knew that the one place I wanted to go was Alaska. And I'd never been, and didn't want to take a big cruise. I didn't have a lot to spend as a retiree, and I wanted to go with people that were like-minded about the outdoors and just have a good time. So I had been on several or many Sierra Club national trips. We provide trips locally here, but the national organization also has trips led by volunteer leaders. So this trip came up in 2018, a couple years after I'd been retired, and it was reasonably priced. It wasn't a cruise. We didn't stay in fancy places. We either camped or stayed in hostels, but it was just exactly the kind of thing to get an introduction to what it was like to be in Alaska and some of the places that you'd want to go while being able to do some active things. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my slideshow here and put it in slideshow mode. And I'm going to go off camera because I'm going to be kind of, reading information about each of these slides as we go along. So I'm going to take my video down, stop video. There we go. And just talk about these slides. So, oops. This is just a little map of the trip that we took. The Sierra Club National organized the trip. There were 11 people on the trip, plus 2 leaders. And we started by flying into Anchorage, Alaska. We all needed to get there in time for a meeting at noon on the 26th. So I flew in a day ahead of time. And you can see this route. We started here at the pin that's dropped. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Anchorage here. We drove here, here, Talkeetna. We'll go through all these. We ended up in Denali National Park. Then we came all the way back down to Anchorage again for a night there. Took a day trip out here to Whittier and back. So it was a long trip, almost 700 miles. Probably it was 700 miles because we did some old side trips. But it was over 9 days. The first thing we did was meet on the 26th of June to get together. But I got there early the day before, so I wanted to go see this exhibit at the Anchorage Museum. The exhibit was called Unsettled, and I'm going to just quickly read this story that was there because I thought it was pretty powerful. And it said, colonizing resources. The human beings who settled in the Greater West did so because they saw the potential for sustaining their families, tribes, and societies. The first inhabitants of the land saw nature as a living, breathing entity and treated it with reverence and respect. The next wave of inhabitants introduced the notion of privately held property and transferred nature into a resource. The search for raw materials to fuel industries, including precious metals and other mineral resources, continues to impact the super region of the West, and especially here in Alaska. This section of Unsettled that I was in when I saw this sign is based on the premise that people colonize land, not just other people, but they colonize land, water, air, plants, animals, minerals, and other people. And this, whoops, let me go back for just a second here. This piece of art here is a it's a tradition, example of traditional clothing, but it's made from metal by the artist to emphasize strength and endurance. And then, this text here set the tone for the unsettled nature of the region and colonization still to this day. So I went to the museum the afternoon I got there, and the rest of the group also went to the museum the next day. We went as a group. So it was really a great exhibit. 5 floors in this museum, all kinds of great exhibits besides just this one. So after that, we met, and then that first day, we drove up to the Finger Lakes in the area of Wasilla. It's a state park, a state recreation area, and we camped there. And you can see that the weather here doesn't look really very promising. We set up camp, and the plan was to kayak from lake to lake, a series of lakes kind of in a line with little narrow passageways in between. And fortunately, it cleared up in the morning. Here we are setting up our little tents. There's one of the vans that we came in. People are starting to cook dinner. And it turned into just an absolutely beautiful day. We spent the morning kayaking through lakes that look like this. Then there would be a little inlet outlet, or I guess outlet. We'd go through the outlet, come to another lake. And here I am with hat, big rain jacket, expecting to be rained on, and it turned out to be just beautiful. This was like a half day kayaking trip. And in the afternoon, we then traveled up a little ways from this park to Hatcher Creek and to take a hike up to Hatcher Pass on the Hatcher Pass Trail. And I think this was one of my favorite hikes of the trip um, because we hiked up along this beautiful creek into these mountains. We went up a pass. We went by this lake that had a very big beaver dam up to this pass. And from here, we're looking down. That beaver dam was way down at the other end of this lake somewhere. So we hiked up there and just look at the scenery. It was amazing. And then this is some of our group just hiking along the trail there. It was beautiful. So we returned to our camp and we're standing there at Finger Lakes. It looks like early evening, but this is actually midnight. These are some of the folks on the trip on the little dock near where we got our kayaks. But because we're at the almost, just right after the summer solstice, I believe this was June 26th. So right after the solstice, longest day of the year was just 5 days before. And in Alaska, the longest day is basically all day and all night. So this was midnight at our campground. And then the next day, our destination was Talkeetna. Talkeetna is a small town that's it's a popular jumping off point for climbers going to Denali. But on the way, we stopped at the Iditarod headquarters for the Iditarod race, the Iditarod race, and we saw some sled dogs and a puppy and puppies. So that's me holding a puppy. And then we continued on the way up to Talkeetna. Talkeetna is along this, I gotta say this right. Now I can't remember it. I didn't write it down. Susutna River, something like that. I'll figure it out. And we stayed at the Roadhouse there, which was like a hotel hostel it's kind of iconic. It's the place to go if you're in Talkeetna. And this photo here is almost midnight. We're, looking at kind of a little bit of a sunset that you might get on an evening like this. And in that distance behind those clouds is Denali, the highest peak in the North American continent. We were hoping for a view of the peak, but as you can see, clouds and it didn't show. We waited about a bit longer, but we never did get to see that massive peak. Here is a little bit earlier when the clouds were not quite so low, and you can kind of see the peak back here, parts of it, or at least part of the mountain range, and it's back there, but we never did get to see Denali. And apparently, visitors to Alaska, somewhere in the range of about 30% of travelers actually get to have a view of Denali because of the clouds frequently being there. So we spent the night here. The next day was a hiking day again. This Talkeetna Lakes Park was our destination, and the weather didn't look great again, but we didn't have any rain. We enjoyed the hike, and again, this is 2018. And I don't exactly remember where we hiked, but I think we took this loop around this lake, or maybe up here to the right. Those lakes. I think we went around this big lake. We had a cloudy day, but just really beautiful scenery. A couple of our people took off their shoes and walked down to check out the water temperature. It was just really pretty. And from there, our next destination was Denali State Park. So this was a little bit different. We had these camping cabins at the state park. They were actually quite brand new when we were there. Um, they had just opened them, I believe, that year, maybe the year before, but they didn't have any facilities other than uh, bunks to sleep on, to put your sleeping bag out on. I don't remember if there were pads. Hopefully there were to sleep on, or we might have had to bring our own. Um, there was an upstairs and a downstairs in each cabin and a wood stove if we needed it for heat. I don't remember if we needed to use it, but it was really comfortable. And in between the cabins were kind of next to each other, and in between them was an area where we could um, have our meals and the table for cooking. So this is that evening, some of our group trying to kind of figure out which way they wanted to walk around near the campground. Nobody could quite figure out which way to go, but we've figured it out. Had a nice evening there. There was a lookout there that looked across to the peak. Once again, we couldn't see it. So the next day, we actually went up to Denali National Park, and our leaders they'd arranged all these things, permits, campgrounds, reservations, cars, the whole thing. They had reserved a campsite that was right next to where we're standing, across a little road from where we're standing in the national park, a group campsite right at the edge of, it's about as far out as you're allowed to drive, unless you have a camping reservation farther in, at one campground farther in the park. At least at this time when we were there, there was one other campground quite a ways into the park that you could drive to, but we were the farthest you could drive otherwise, and camped at this spot. And this was in the evening. We just kind of walked out to the edge of the Savage River. This was the Savage River group campsite. Um, we did, we were told, don't go any farther, stay right there. Don't go down to the river or anything, because there are grizzly bears and moose in the area. Um, we got a little bit of rain during this time there. There was a lot of evidence, a lot of droppings of moose throughout the campground, but we didn't see any bears or moose right here in our campsite. It was a little scary walking to the bathroom though, because it was quite a ways, and you just never know what you're going to run into. This is our camp, how we set it up with our little tents everywhere, and you can see in the background we have tables and some tarps set up because we did get some rain and had to sit under the tarps while we had our dinner. Our leaders, they've got a permit, which you have to get for a lot of these, any hiking around in Denali. They got a permit for a really pretty hike near our camp. We started up a trail that got us these amazing views. And as we were hiking, only the two leaders could be either the leader or the sweep, because they each carried a bear spray can, and were trained in how to use it. So we had to stay in between them because they were the ones that carried the bear spray. We didn't see any bears on this hike. We did see a female moose and calf ahead of us on the trail, and the leaders kept kind of hanging back because the moose, the two, I'm not sure if you say mooses, the two moose were kind of following the same trail we were. So we stayed quite a distance away, and this is a very long shot, zoom of the moose and the adult moose and the young one. You can't really hardly make them out, but you can see something there. But we stayed far away because moose can be very dangerous. And the one thing that our leaders told us, I wasn't going to tell this, but we're going along pretty quickly here. They said that, yeah, moose will charge. They will charge you if you upset them, and they are relentless. They will charge you, knock you down, and stomp you. But if you hide behind a tree, they will just keep going. They will charge, but they won't realize you're not there anymore because you're just standing behind a tree and they'll just keep going. So one of the things they told us as we're hiking is to just kind of keep our eye out, look for trees nearby as we're walking as a place to hide behind if we need to. Because I think moose are just as scary as a bear up there. We kept going. We got up to the top of this ridge. There I am, tired, posing for a shot at the top of the ridge, looking out over the Savage River Valley and across to some of the mountains in the range that Denali's in, but a different direction. Again, here's a closer a view more from our near our campground. We kind of walked over to as far as we could go this evening to look at again at the Savage River and some of the mountains nearby. I thought this was a really pretty view. And here we are at camp, looking like it's the middle of the day or afternoon. It's 10:30 here. The clouds are pretty scary looking, but I don't think we got any rain further that night because after midnight we walked out again to actually down to the river. It's still daylight and you're kind of not tired. So we walked down to the river that evening, or it's hard to know, evening, morning, whatever it was. But that's where we were at 12 midnight or a little after midnight. The next day was our Denali tour. And to go through the park, you need to take a bus tour. You ride in a bus for 7 or 8 hours. There's a guide with speakers. You all have speakers, you have headphones, and you have a little screen that you can see what they're pointing out. And ideally, you bring binoculars with you and a camera so you can get something out the window and actually see some wildlife. This was a mother grizzly bear and two cubs. These are not new cubs from this year. These would be second year cubs, but they stay with the mother for, I don't remember how long, but they stay for quite a while, at least a couple years with the mother. And this was way distant from where we were riding, but at least we were able to see this set of grizzly bears. Pretty exciting. This was a caribou. This was the only one we saw that was fairly close. And our group did see a lynx. The driver had said he hadn't seen one for 2 years, so we were really fortunate. It wasn't something that I was able to get a picture of, but it was pretty cool to see a lynx. Here's a couple more grizzlies just laying there, a mama and a younger cub in this one. And then if you look really close at some little white dots, you'll see the sheep, the doll sheep that live up there on this interestingly colored hillside. This is all part of the bus tour that you take. It was at Denali, the cruise ships come in and unload people. There's all kinds of resort hotels and stuff there. So we have a lot of cruiser people on the bus, and it's a pretty, it's like a school bus size bus. It's not a little small tour bus. It's an old school bus thing. So it's pretty interesting. Be nice if you could just tour it in a smaller group, but that's how it was at that time and probably still is. The scenery. Well, maybe I'll stop for a minute and see. John, have you got any questions or anything? I haven't looked at the chat.
Yes, there's
Okay.
one question. How are the mosquitoes?
You know, I don't really remember having any big problem with mosquitoes. It's been a long time, but I don't recall having any big issues with mosquitoes there. And I know that's a thing of Alaska, giant mosquitoes that are terrible. Maybe it was early enough in the season, but I don't remember having any big issue with them. Most of the time we were pretty well, as you can see from the pictures, most of the time we were pretty well covered up. It wasn't like we were running around in shorts and t-shirts most of the time. So I don't recall any big issues with mosquitoes. It's a good question.
Yeah, that's the only current question.
Okay. And then the scenery on this bus trip was just really beautiful. You go from, the lower elevations of green grass up to interesting different hues of the mountains and then the higher peaks with snow. This is another area we actually, at one point, maybe halfway through the trip, we came to a river valley where they do allow you to stop and get out and walk around for a while. And it's interesting, these roads along these hillsides, I would not want to be a bus driver on these roads. They're very narrow, kind of scary, but they do an excellent job of getting us around this park. So it's just stunning scenery. We spent that night again in the national park in our campground. Then the next morning, we went over to the tourist area where all the cruise ships unload and visitor center and all sorts of things. And they have a little demonstration of sled dogs. And I thought it was kind of fun that all these dogs are standing on top of their little huts. They each have a little hut and they stand up there and the rangers gave us a talk about how important it is that they have these dogs and take good care of them so that they can go out and make rescues or do whatever needs to be done throughout the park in the winter. And they are big, beautiful dogs and treated very well. That was kind of fun. And that was our last part of the adventure in Denali. Um, so after this, we got back in the vans and took a long ride back to Anchorage. We stayed the night in Anchorage. It's about a 5 hour drive, I believe, probably a 6 hour drive with any stops that need to be made. So it was a long day. We got to that same place that we stayed in on the first night. It was called the Bent Paddle or Bent Oar. Um, it's kind of a combination hotel and hostel because some of you could either have we had bunk rooms. We didn't have individual rooms there, but it was fine. So, but our final day was to take a boat tour out of Whittier, which is a big port there near Prince William Sound. So we got in the vans and drove the Seward Highway along the Turnagain Arm, which is a really pretty um, inlet that has unusually high change of tide. That people actually will, it has such a big tide that can be high enough for people to actually surf on when the tide goes in or when the tide goes out. Or in, I think it's when the tide goes out, they can surf on the tidal wave. It's such a big wave. Um, but we drove along the Turnagain Arm towards Whittier, and that was kind of a tricky thing for our guides to plan, our leaders to plan, because you go through a tunnel that's used both by, it's a one-way tunnel and trains go through it. So you have to time it right for when it's open to cars going in the direction you want to go. So they timed it so we could get through the tunnel during one of the times it was open to drive through it towards Whittier. And we first stopped um, after passing the Turnagain Arm. We stopped in a place called Portage, where we had views like this of a lake there and the mountains surrounding this valley. There's a different direction in Portage and another view of the mountains there. We stayed there for just a little while. There was a visitor center. We walked around a bit. It was really pretty. And then we headed on to our final destination at Whittier to get on a little boat, one of the small tour boats that they have. I believe it was around 100 people, maybe, with big decks, 140, 120, 40, somewhere in there. But it was a small boat with big decks all around it. So You weren't crowded. You could walk around either inside or outside on the decks and see beautiful scenery like this. I believe this is the Surprise Glacier that we went to. Um, it was unusually crowded in the whole area. It was the opening day for salmon season, so there were lots of fishermen boats out in the area that we were going around there in the sound. And so they had to kind of change up our direction a little bit, and we weren't in an area where we got to see a lot of wildlife. Um, it was still an amazing tour to see all these sights. And as you can see, we had perfect weather, which I guess is fairly unusual for Whittier. Um, you can see in the distance here, you can see glaciers coming down towards the water. We were able to go, whoops, what happened to whoops, sorry. Let me get back. How do I go back? I did have a couple of slides of some, well, you really couldn't see anything. I had a slide in here. I don't know what happened to it, of a little ripple in the water where there was a raft of sea otters, and then an island in the distance where there was a seal and some birds. And that was about the extent of the wildlife we saw. We didn't get to see a whale. We kind of saw one go by in the distance under the water, but never a breach. So we didn't see any whales, no orcas. But it was still a beautiful day out there. And we were fortunate to have this kind of weather, because typically in Whittier, it's not so nice. This was our last day. It went by really quickly. And as I was doing this, I was curious and wondering what these glaciers look like today. How far have they receded in the 7 years since I took this trip? Be interesting to see a picture like this. So after this, we went back to our hotel. People are drying their tents out, airing them out, drying them out to make sure they're all dry to pack up and leave. We had a really nice dinner at the same place that I had dinner the first night. And again, I had halibut fish and chips because it was absolutely wonderful. And it was, we packed up and people had their flights out that day. It was just a really good adventure, well planned, well orchestrated, and you meet all kinds of fun people on these trips. So that is all I have. I'm going to stop sharing and see if anybody is curious about any other aspects of Sierra Club National trips.
So nothing else is in the chat section. At this point, if
Okay.
individuals want to unmute and ask a question about national trips or whatever, they can do that.
Yeah, and you can stop making me you can take off the whatever
yeah.
it is. But
Remove spotlight.
there we go. Take off the spotlight. I don't need a spotlight.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So now if someone talks there, they will show.
No. Okay.
Well, that was great, Marianne.
Thank you. It was a really fun trip. These trips are reasonable. This is, like I said, it was 7 years ago. So the prices, I'm sure, are different now, but I think for the entire 9 days, aside from getting there, which you always have to cover yourselves on Sierra Club trips, um, it was like $2,600. And I'm going to actually go back to my slideshow for just a minute as soon as I find it, because I had two more slides I wanted to share. Um, Alaska is one of it is our biggest state with the most public land, and it's under threat from extraction industries. I don't know if folks are following this, but last week, the Bureau of Land Management put out a whole bunch of land available for oil leases. This is something that was stopped under the previous administration. But they started up again with opening up parts of the Arctic oil reserve for oil leases and drilling. It was very unsuccessful. A very small part of the land that they opened up was asked, was applied for leasing on, which was a really good outcome. But that's not going to be the end of it. So we have an action alert that I've linked here, and I'll go to it after. Well, let's see if I can go to it now. I think I can. So here's an action alert to keep polluters' hands off of public lands. And you just, sign this alert, and I don't know if this one's a petition. Yeah, this one is like a petition action alert that would keep you informed and make a petition for them to stop polluters from messing up our public lands. And then the second one that I have is the roadless rule. The repeal of the roadless rule is a real problematic one, not just in Alaska, but throughout the whole country, including our national forests here in the Angeles and San Bernardino National Forest. We have lands there that don't have roads. And that's important because every time you add a road, it increases the fire risk. Fires are 90% more likely to start near a road. You block off animals from moving through their habitat. And there's a action going on in Congress to repeal this. So we're again getting people to use their voice to ask them not to repeal the roadless rule. And that's another action alert that we'll follow up with sending these out to protect our wildest forests from the administration and what they want to do to open up this rule. So the one thing I want to mention is that it does work. It does work when people speak up. There's a recent win. Let's see if I can stop sharing. That happened just in the last, I believe it was just in the last week when Congress did not take an action that they tagged this action onto a bill that was being passed. They would have rescinded the management plan for the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. And that was a really sneaky step. It's not something Congress is normally even supposed to do, but they wanted to do it. And what that would in effect do, it would just end any management of that amazing, beautiful Grand Staircase National Monument. And they'd have to go back to the drawing board and not be able to use the management plan that was already in place. And the threat was that if that happens in one national monument, that can happen anywhere if they can get by with that. But they had so much opposition from people like us saying, don't do this, that they didn't do it. Went off, it was taken off the bill, didn't get even a hearing. So that was a win. And I'll leave you with that. Be sure and check our.
One more question.
Sure.
How did you pack the tents for airline luggage?
Well,
you flew from home up there. How
Right.
did you do that?
Well, these are small, you're taking if we go back to the pictures of those tents, these are small backpacking tents. And they fit in a bag that's maybe 5 inches in diameter and 2 feet long at the most. They're small tents that fit into, and I believe I had like a big duffel bag and I put my tent in there and like a little day pack and a sleeping bag and a sleeping pad. So it's similar to the kind of things you would take in a backpack if you were backpacking, and had to carry all that stuff with you. It's got to be fairly, relatively small and fit. And so you can just take it on the plane and check your luggage.
So you put it all into a duffel.
I think I put it all into a big duffel bag, yeah. Not that big though, because if you think about a backpack is, for a 4 or 5 day backpack trip, you're not going to have you don't have that much room to carry an awful lot of stuff, so it's got to be pretty small.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Well,
how we did it.
yeah. I don't see any other questions. Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
All right, well, thank you everyone for your interest and for signing up, and hope to see you at some of our outings.
And in the chat, Marianne at the beginning posted the YouTube channel, and then I did later on for people who joined later because they can't see their earlier chat. So at 7:33, I posted the YouTube channel again, and here it is again.
There it is again, and it's actually on our website. If you go to, if you just Google Sierra Club San Gorgonio, it's going to take you to our website. And there's a link at the bottom of the first page, the home page. There's a link to the YouTube channel, and our calendar is on the home page with everything that's happening. We normally have a monthly meeting the first Tuesday of each month in San Bernardino at the San Bernardino County Museum. July, we are going to skip because that first Tuesday is, I think it's the day before the 4th, or maybe it's even the 4th. And people are traveling, and nobody could make the next Tuesday either. So we'll start up again the first Tuesday in August with a chapter-wide meeting in Redlands. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay. All right. Nice
Yeah,
to meet
thank
all
you.
of you.
Thank you, Marianne.